Thank you, Mr. Chair, and welcome, Governor Noem. Really appreciate you being here. Welcome to your family as well.
Thank you.
And families do share in this kind of public service, and we appreciate them very much. As we discussed at our meeting last month, as a former governor, I appreciate the important responsibilities that governors have to ensure the safety and security of their communities, including by managing public safety and emergency agencies. And I will say that in many ways, I agree with some of the things that Senator Scott just said about improving communication between the Department of Homeland Security and governors around who is being sent to states. It's a critical issue and something that I was frustrated by when I was governor. So I look forward to hearing more today about your priorities, if confirmed, about how your experience as governor would help you run the Department of Homeland Security. Let me just start by following up with a question that Senator Peters had also touched on. We have recently in New Hampshire seen a dramatic increase in unauthorized border crossings at the northern border. And when I was at the northern border recently, law enforcement told me about the need for more personnel and resources. We still don't have cell phone coverage in a lot of the stretch of our northern border. I've worked with Senator Kramer on bipartisan legislation to strengthen our northern border strategy because it's clear more support is needed. So, Governor, if you're confirmed, would you deploy additional full-time personnel and upgrade equipment along the northern border?
You know, Senator, I enjoyed our meeting that we had and you identifying the northern border issues that are going on, the lack of security and the lack of technologies that you really need to cover some of the landscapes that are there. Very different than the southern border, some just as equally challenging, but all need to be addressed. So I definitely will be working with you to ensure that our northern border is adequately resourced as well. And we do have to have the resources in order to be successful.
Right.
That's something I want to work with Congress, with the Senate and the House on to ensure that the resources are there to meet the challenges that we have. We have not fully utilized the technologies that are available that are necessary to really secure this country and to compete with those bad actors which wish to infiltrate our country. And having the ability to utilize them will make us much more safe. So I'll work with you most definitely in ensuring the northern border is protected.
Well, I appreciate that. And I just note, too, that at the same time, there's real concern in New Hampshire and all along the northern border that we strengthen the border and have the resources we need. We also have a really strong economic relationship with our our friends to the north and a lot of family relationships. So I think it's important that we're smart in the deployment of technology. We don't want to impede that flow of economy and people that's lawful, but we do want to make sure that we have the resources we need. I want to turn to the southern border now. At the southern border, we need significant technological investments to support law enforcement personnel in their efforts to catch fentanyl smugglers, to stop human traffickers, and seize the cash and illegal guns that criminals traffic southward to the cartels. And we talked about this a little bit. There's bipartisan support for these investments, and I've worked with colleagues, including Senators Langford and Cornyn, on legislation around these issues. Governor Noem, could you identify specific technological investments that you would make at the southern border, and are you willing to work with me on increasing southbound inspections if you're confirmed?
Yes, certainly, Senator. You've heard President Trump talk about the need to build a wall, and the wall and infrastructure is critically important, but also at our 382 legal ports of entry, we need to have technologies so that flow can happen north and south, and it can happen in a legal manner to ensure that our commerce can continue to operate and that we can continue to make sure that we're also secure. I think de minimis shipments are a concern, and the need to look at those and how traffickers and fentanyl distributors are using that. I think we also need to use scanners, surveillance operations. There's new technologies out there to cooperate with satellites in some area where the topography does not necessarily facilitate having actual infrastructure, and then also the ability to make sure that we're utilizing that technology that allows us to know what is going south that might be fueling some of the violence that ends up coming back north, and ensuring that we're stopping that before it has the chance to supply those cartel and bad actors that would come in.
Yeah, I really appreciate that because the southbound flow, particularly of cash and weapons, fuels the cartels and strengthens them.
Absolutely.
And it's something that we really have to focus on. I also want to follow up on the issue of cybersecurity. Recently, criminals launched a successful cyber attack on PowerSchool, a cloud-based record management system that contains personal information about tens of millions of kindergartners through high school seniors, including many students and teachers in New Hampshire. This cyber attack on PowerSchool comes as schools and local governments across the country have seen a surge in cyber attacks on their systems. And when a small school of maybe a couple of thousand system, maybe 1,000 students or so has to pay $2 million in ransom. I want you to think about what that does to one of our small communities, right? So Governor Noem, if you're confirmed, how will you empower the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency to improve the cybersecurity of state and local governments in the United States?
Well, thank you, Senator. If I am confirmed and have the opportunity to serve as secretary of this department, I'll be following the Constitution and the rule of law and then getting these departments back on mission to why they were created and why they are existing. What CISA should be doing is helping those small entities, those schools, those local city governments, the state governments, and the small businesses that are critical infrastructure that don't have the resources to stay on top of the critical protections that they need to enact.
Well, let me follow up just quickly on that one point. It's something we discussed when we had our meeting. I worked with Senator Cornyn on a bipartisan bill that became law that created a cybersecurity grant program for state and local governments. This is in addition to each state getting a cyber coordinator to help on the ground. We discussed this program, and I know you as governor had some reservations about the structure of the program. But if confirmed, will you commit to working with Congress to adjust it? I'd love your input about what gave you pause as governor. I think there were only 2 governors who didn't participate in the program. And I hope that as we work on the concerns you have, you'd work with me to adjust and reauthorize the program.
Yes. All grants within the department will be evaluated when I come in and be looked at to see what we can do to make sure that they're actually fulfilling the mission to which they were established. What I would say about the cybersecurity grants in South Dakota, when I came in as governor, one of my main priorities was to bring the next industry into the state. And I determined that that would be technology and cybersecurity. In fact, we have Dakota State University in our state, which is a cybersecurity national leader in training those cyber warriors that we need to protect us and keep us safe. I've since then partnered to grow and double the size of that school. We train a lot of NSA employees in South Dakota. And so understanding cybersecurity and my experience in that, I think, is critically important to the department and bringing it to the table to do this. You talked about why we didn't take that cybersecurity grant in South Dakota, and it's because the requirements of that grant would have caused me to grow my state government. The administration costs of it would have been much more than what it would have been able to facilitate at the local level, and our state was already proactively helping these individuals that needed the resources to secure their systems.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm way over time. There were very few requirements purposely in that grant program other than to make sure the money was being spent the way we authorized. But let's continue to talk about that. Thank you.
Thank you.